Hello everybody, welcome back to Slick Slices. As many of you will be aware, I'm very keen on traditional patterns, and I have here three knives that have converging heritages. You'll have seen this knife many times before. It's a Sheffield made knife from Arthur Wright. They're not the best quality of knives these days. Their fit and finish can be hit and miss at best. This one's actually not too bad, especially considering the price. But it's very traditional. I don't know how long they've been making these things. You'd think after a couple of hundred years they'd be getting it right. The knife on the other end is what's now known as a sodbuster pattern, but it has a much longer standing German name, which I really don't know. I don't speak German at all, so I struggle with that anyway. But this, what's now become the sodbuster pattern, has a very long history in Germany, about 300 and odd years, and this one here was made in Solingen. It's only in recent years that the last 100 years or so, that the sodbuster pattern has become very much associated with case, and in fact it's only in the last 50 years, within my lifetime, that the name sodbuster was trademarked by case. In fact, 1967 it was. They trademarked the name sodbuster and the sodbuster junior. So the history of knives in Solingen goes back just as long as it does in Sheffield. I don't know who's got the oldest tradition or whatever, but they certainly go back to the 17th century, before the founding of the United States. And we'll see with this particular one that, look at the branding on the blade, you can see that Carl Sleeper, the eye brand, the all-seeing eye of God, made in Solingen in Germany. Unfortunately, much of the knife making tradition in Germany seems to have gone the same way as that of Sheffield, in that fit and finish is at best hit and miss. It fits where it touches. It's finished when they stop working on it. But I'm glad to say that there is another tradition of knives in Solingen which are rather better. And I'm going to look at a Solingen knife here, and it'll become obvious what it is really in a second. But let's look at it in a straightforward sense. We have two knives here with wooden scales. They're both supposedly rosewood, but one's very different to the other. They are a 4-pin design, so you have 3 brass pins, and then you have a nickel silver pin in this case, and a stainless steel pin in this case, holding them together. They have a back spring, in this case brass liners, in this case steel liners. They're slightly different in terms of their thickness as well. The British one is rather thinner, the German one slightly more portly, but they look very similar. This one has a lanyard hole and this one doesn't, so that's moved the bottom pin slightly, but they're ostensibly very similar looking knives. But if I turn them over, you'll see where the difference comes. This one is pretty much the same on the other side except for a nail neck. This one has a big brass inlaid anchor, and as I say, that is in fact a brass anchor that is cut into the wood before the knife is hefted. Once it's been hefted, the anchor becomes a smooth integral part of the handle scale, and I think it looks really quite smart. It marks it out for what it is, and gives its tradition as a naval knife. And many of you will know that traditionally naval knives, like this British Navy rigging knife, have sheep's foot non-pointy blades, which I think, I mean, I don't really know the reason, but I think it's a lot to do with the fact that you have a lot of men cooped up in a small ship together, close quarters, and having stabby pointy knives in their hands might not necessarily be the smartest idea. I don't know. When the Mary Rose was recovered out of the Solent in south of England, which was Henry VIII's flagship, if anybody who doesn't know, so that will be 17th century. A lot of knives were recovered, and it seems that almost all seamen carried a bollock dagger. Someone's called a ballock dagger, but when you see them, you'll know exactly why it's called a bollock dagger. They are long, thin, pointy knives, and quite good fighting knives. What is fairly obvious about this one is it's really not a fighting knife, it's a working knife. So it's a good idea to put knives like that in the hands of seamen. So it won't therefore be a total shock to see that the Sheffield pattern here, which is not really designed as necessarily as a seaman's knife, but it does have very much a sheep's foot blade. The German Anker messer, Anker being anchor and messer being knife, has a similar sort of style of blade, although one could argue with some strength that it's a Wharncliffe rather than a sheep's foot, but you know, it's somewhere between the two. It's not really as pointy as you'd expect with a Wharncliffe. The back isn't quite as straight as you might expect with a sheep's foot, but it's somewhere around that sort of area. It's a relatively inoffensive blade. It has Otter, which is the brand, the manufacturer, and a picture of an otter catching a fish. And then it says here Rostfrei, which is Rostfrei, whatever, I don't know, I'm not doing it, so I don't do German, which basically means stainless steel. The Solingen, as with a lot of traditionals, stainless steel is as close as you're going to get to a description of what it's actually made of. It doesn't really matter. This one actually is carbon steel, so it will rust. This one here, being stainless steel, is again a nod to the sailors. Plus, it's got stainless steel bolsters, stainless steel liners. So you know, and brass fittings and so forth. It's clearly actually is designed as a seaman's knife. Anyway, it's very nicely made. It's got a little bit more heft to it in the hand than the other ones, than the Sheffield one. It also came, unlike the Sheffield one, really quite sharp. It'll slice through paper and hair and all the sort of usual tests, none of which I'm going to show you here. And in terms of size, it is again of the traditional, you know, a handle length of a little over 90 millimeters. So that's kind of Swiss Army knife sized. It's got certainly a sub 3-inch blade, quite well under 3 inches really. So a good UK carry pocket knife, and I actually really like it. So there we are. It's the Anker messer from Otter, and supplied by Heine Haynes, although I did pay for it. It's not a gift. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.